The Deadpool and Wolverine trailer dropped today. Let's break it down. First thing we see, Wolverine is sitting in a bar. Bartender says, "You're not welcome here, you're not welcome anywhere." Now, this is our first real clue as to who this Wolverine is. Of course, when Deadpool appears, Wolverine says, "Look, lady, I'm not interested," which is a reference to two things. The first is obviously Lady Deadpool, who's supposed to be in this movie and played by Blake Lively, which I'm very excited about because she is gorgeous. The second thing this is a reference to is X-Men First Class, when Xavier and Magneto tried to recruit Wolverine, and he used more colorful language, but more or less said the same thing. Now, following this, what is likely a skirmish ensues, and Wolverine tries to pop his claws, but they don't quite pop the way that they're supposed to, which seems to indicate that he hasn't used them for a while. This is the next clue on who this Wolverine is. I'm curious to see if you guys can piece this together by the end of the video, if you haven't already, because if you're a comic book fan, I guarantee you have. Of course, we also see the 20th century logo among a bunch of other little geographic landmarks that are all just kind of left here in the void at the end of time, the place where things are sent to by the TVA whenever timelines are pruned. This isn't really new here. If anything, it just kind of confirms what we already knew when we saw the teaser trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine before. After this, we get what is probably one of the biggest reveals in the trailer. Deadpool tells Wolverine that he's about to lose everything that's important to him, and then Wolverine responds, "That's not my problem." And Deadpool asks the question, "Is that what you said when your entire world got destroyed?" or something to that effect. What this shows is that by Deadpool saying your world, this shows this Wolverine is from a whole new movie universe that we've never seen before. The reason for that is because while there are a whole bunch of time travel shenanigans, and while the chronology is all kinds of screwed up, the reality is that if you watch the Fox X-Men movies in the recommended order, it tells one cohesive story. It all takes place in the same universe, from First Class running all the way up to Days of Future Past that shows the end result of what the future could look like for the mutant population. But because we also saw the X-Men First Class cast in the Deadpool film, it showed that Deadpool took place in the main 20th Century Fox universe. And so if this was Wolverine from Deadpool's universe, the main 20th Century Fox universe, Deadpool would have said, "Is that what you said when our world went to crap?" And with this involving the TVA, it does make sense. The Time Variance Authority is all about alternate realities and things along those lines. How far-reaching it is and whether or not they pruned the universe that Wolverine was in, that is a little bit up for debate, although I believe they did, and we'll talk more about that as we get further through the trailer. Of course, this gives us a momentary flashback of when Wolverine's world seemed to go to crap, and all we have here are just a bunch of gigantic tombstones, and anybody who's familiar with the story of Days of Future Past knows about those tombstones. They're tombstones for the varying members of the X-Men. Now, I don't think they're going in the direction of Days of Future Past, but what they are doing is they're showing us that seemingly in the world that Wolverine is from, all the X-Men died. In fact, this is seemingly expanded on by the statement that Mr. Paradox makes in saying, this Wolverine let down his whole world. So again, these are all clues that show us who this version of Wolverine is. Now, following this, we get a bunch of sequential shots, a lot of which just kind of show the fight between Deadpool and Wolverine. And let's just be honest here, we're all looking forward to the fight between these two guys. I know I am. We also get a moment where Deadpool and Wolverine are just kind of like walking out from behind what looks like some kind of food truck. There's two major things going on here that I spotted. The first one is a bar called Copperheads, which is obviously a reference to the fact that Davis Loffers is going to be a major player in this movie. Definitely not. If you know, you know. If you're a comic book fan, you get the joke. If you're not a comic book fan, you don't. The second thing here is a reference to Rob Liefeld, Nothing But Feet, or something along those lines. This is a joke. The reason why is because Rob Liefeld cannot draw feet. He's never been able to draw feet. He still can't draw feet. Like 30 years after becoming a major comic book artist making millions, it's the bane of his existence. Following this, we do get a full body shot of Cassandra Nova. She is established to be the main villain in this movie. We'll talk more about her as we get further through this towards the end, because the reality here is I think she and Wolverine are actually connected, and I think the two of them have a grudge. We do get to see Alioth making its way through the void at the end of time. For those of you guys who never saw Loki, basically Alioth was initially a weapon used to destroy the multiverse, and now it just sits at the void at the end of time, gobbling up everything that lands there. So by and large, people who live there are usually always on the run, hiding from it, different things like that. It's just kind of like this omnipresent force of destruction. But then we get this really, really amazing reveal where Cassandra Nova and seemingly those individuals who exist around her basically live inside just the giant dead body of Ant-Man. We also get to see some familiar faces. I wasn't really able to make out all of them, but of course we get like Azazel, we get Toad, we get Lady Deathstrike. It looks like we might also get Caliban and Sabretooth. If there were any others that you spotted, post a comment down below and let me know. And then of course Wolverine gets handed quite readily by Cassandra Nova. This is because Cassandra Nova does have telepathy, but she also has telekinesis, and she's incredibly powerful. But then of course Wolverine and Deadpool end up jumping through a portal at the end of the trailer. Now, that is not a TVA portal. That of course is a Doctor Strange portal. I personally think that they're recruited by Doctor Strange. So having said all of that, what I think this movie is doing is kind of a modified version of Old Man Logan. At least that's how they're going to depict the universe that this version of Wolverine comes from. Everything else takes place in the void at the end of time. The only exception to that is when the TVA recruits Deadpool and when Deadpool's talking to Mr. Paradox in what is clearly the TVA headquarters. But the bar scene at the beginning of the movie, that takes place in the void at the end of time. So does everything else. Now, the reason why I say a modified version of Old Man Logan is because in Marvel Comics, Old Man Logan was a story where the Red Skull had basically brought together the entirety of the supervillain community to defeat the superheroes. Now, of course, they're not going to use Red Skull in this movie, but what happened in this is that the Red Skull organized them in such a way to where villains fought heroes they wouldn't normally fight, just because of the nature of their powers. The most iconic moment in Old Man Logan is when the Spider-Man villain Mysterio casts an illusion to trick Wolverine into thinking that all the X-Men's major villains are invading the X-Men mansion. Wolverine kills them all only to find out that he had actually killed the X-Men. And so because of this, Wolverine basically took off and became a hermit. He refused to pop his claws for something like 50 years. He just started calling himself Logan instead of calling himself Wolverine. Now, I think the modification for this is going to be that in the universe that he comes from, by whatever manner and whatever means, Cassandra Nova ended up basically creating an illusion in Wolverine's mind using telepathy and got him to kill the X-Men. That's what Dr. Paradox is saying when he says that Wolverine betrayed his entire world. I think that's why the bartender says, "You're not welcome here, you're not welcome anywhere." Because even though this timeline was likely pruned by the Time Variance Authority, obviously there are survivors, and the number of survivors is very small. And like any small town, word gets around. But whatever the reason happens to be, he's the reason why the superheroes in his world are dead. It's the guilt that follows him around. But because Cassandra Nova was the one that got him to do it, that's his grudge against her. This movie is likely simply just going to be, okay, Deadpool, I will help you, but you need to help me destroy Cassandra Nova and get my revenge. Deadpool's like, okay, cool. And then he ends up basically helping him. Now, let's talk about the end of the movie with the portal. I think Doctor Strange is recruiting a team of superheroes across the multiverse. That it started with America Chavez, and it'll just kind of go from there. Deadpool and Wolverine are going to be two of those characters. They're going to be one of any number of teams that are likely going to face off against Kang the Conqueror in Secret Wars. I wouldn't be surprised if this was referred to as Doctor Strange's Secret Avengers. With that being said, guys, let me know what you think down in the comments section. Is there anything that I missed? Let me know, and I will catch you all later. Peace.